Welcome back, everybody, to yet another edition of NB8 right here on Wood TV Plus. Phil Pinarski here, joined as always with AJ Evans. AJ, we had a great show planned for everybody today, and then, of course, the NBA world once again threw a wrench in everything. We had to kind of scramble a little bit, but we've got a really awesome show planned for everybody today. Of course, we're going to go over the Pistons, and that's how we'll actually start our show today, and just what they've been able to do over the past week. But we also have the All-Star reserves to get to, as the All-Star weekend will be here before we even know it. And then we've got some league-wide news involving the Philadelphia 76ers to get to. And then, of course, the big trade deadline as it looms and all the trades that are happening right now. That's kind of what it was throwing a wrench in our show today. But, AJ, let's first off kind of just take a deep breath and relax from everything that we've seen so far. I mean, in a 15-minute span, it's been kind of hectic leading up to this episode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, man. This is so fun, though.
This is the best time of year for me.
It really is, man. And it's interesting how marketable the trade deadline has become for the NBA. I feel like it holds a different sort of mystique and appeal as opposed to other sports. Trade deadlines are always huge, but this is kind of at an odd time. February, it's just an odd part of the year, but it never disappoints, man.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and again, with the trade deadline looming, I always say that it's fun to see all these other teams kind of scrambling, trying to make these last-minute moves. It's totally different when your team is actually involved in some of these trades, and both of our teams were involved in trades today. But again, we'll get to that in just a second, but like I said, we want to first spend some time talking about the Pistons because they still lead the East, they're still winning, and they're still looking really good doing that. Let's talk about their last week of games. Again, we mentioned that the big game that you had circled, AJ, was that game versus one of the games you had circled was that game versus the Denver Nuggets. It was at Denver. The Pistons were able to win that one 109-107. That was a crazy game, even without Nikola Jokic for the Nuggets. Again, probably a little bit closer than maybe Pistons fans thought it would be. One of the crazier endings you'll ever see. Jamal Murray for the Nuggets getting two kind of phantom three-point shot calls, foul calls, so he was able to shoot some free throws, but as the saying goes, ball doesn't lie, and he missed a couple of free throws that would eventually spell doom for the Nuggets, leading to a Pistons win. Again, I thought it was a really crazy game. I remember watching that on TV and just not knowing what was going to happen next, and just glad that Detroit was able to walk out with a win.
Yeah, that was a nail-biter one, Phil, but it was a good game, obviously. Anytime you can get a hard-fought win on the road, especially in the Western Conference, you always have to count it as a good one. But I think Detroit did a really nice job of taking care of the ball. They only had 6 turnovers in that one, and they forced 15 against Denver. But, yeah, just good teams find ways to win, especially during this part of the year. And they also won the rebounding battle as well, 49-41, which was encouraging to see. Nikola Jokic was obviously out for that one, but still, nonetheless, this is a good Denver team. They have a good crowd. It was a big night for that team. So I was really proud of the fact that they were able to fight and get a win, because I think that is the sign of this team's growth. This is a young team. They easily could have gotten rattled. We could have chalked it up to just, hey, all the cards were stacked up against them, but they went out and pulled out a win, even after giving up a few double-digit leads.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and again, that just spells good news for the Pistons, being able to kind of handle all of that adversity. And, they will be hosting the Denver Nuggets coming up this week, so actually later tonight, actually. So, again, kind of be interested to see how that one plays out. Let's move on to the next game that the Pistons took part in. It was a loss, again, on the road at Phoenix versus the Suns. They lost 114-96. AJ, I'm going to be real honest with you. I have no idea how Detroit lost this game. Not only lost this game, but lost by 18 points. Again, it was another big game from an opponent. This time, Dylan Brooks went for 40 in this game. But again, really weird, because you look at some struggles, some common struggles that we've seen from the Pistons throughout the season has been free throw shooting, 3-point shooting, turnovers. They shot 76% from the free throw line, which isn't outstanding, but it'll keep you in games. And they only had 9 turnovers. I think again the issue was that 3-point shooting. They made just 6 of them and shot 21%. I don't know how you view this game, but again, just a weird circumstances all around. I really don't know how this game got away from them like that.
Yeah, no, and Phoenix has played Detroit well. They only played 2 games, but I mean, in their last game, I was really impressed with them. This is a really scrappy, feisty, interesting Phoenix team. And it's interesting too because, Phil, both times they've played the Pistons, Devin Booker has been out.
Right.
And Devin Booker has really stepped up. He likes, playing that villain role. Colin Gillespie had a good game as well. Grayson Allen did his thing. So it was a frustrating win, a frustrating loss. But at the same time, though, I wasn't too surprised because of how well Phoenix played the first time when they came to Detroit. But yeah, Dylan Brooks went for 40, man. What can you say? Anytime a guy's able to have that explosive of a scoring performance and you, in turn, don't shoot the ball that well, especially from three, it's probably a death sentence for you.
And I could speak from experience. When Dylan Brooks is hot, he's probably one of best heat check players in the entire NBA. It's when he's not scoring the ball that if you're a fan of his, you probably start to close your eyes a little bit.
For sure, and it throws a wrench in your scouting report too,
exactly.
because you don't really plan or bank on Dylan Brooks giving you 40, regardless of whatever option he is that night. First option, second option, third option, but when he's defending as well as he usually does, when he's getting the crowd involved and he's doing everything and getting 40,
right.
The odds are stacked up against you.
Definitely. Well, again, one thing we've also mentioned about the Pistons is their ability to bounce back, and they bounced back big time in the following two wins. They then went on, still on the road. They went to Golden State to take on the Warriors. They won that one 131-124. Game, in my opinion, was really won in that first quarter where Detroit scored 45 points and had an 8-point lead. The Warriors were kind of battling back and forth kind of throughout the game, but Detroit had a lead for 90% of that game.
Yeah.
Again, bounce back shooting from 3-point range also for Detroit in that one. Golden State actually ended up taking twice as many 3-pointers total. They shot 52 3-pointers, not 52 shots. 52 3-pointers in that game. They did not shoot a very high clip in that, and that kind of inevitably spelled doom for them. And I think the big takeaway from the Pistons is that I've seen a lot of teams do this against the Warriors. When the Warriors are shooting a lot of threes, teams might feel, enticed to also shoot a bunch of threes. Detroit did not do that. Like I said, they had half as many 3-point attempts as Golden State, and I feel like that was the key for them to, keep Golden State at bay and just stick to the offense that was been working for them.
Yeah, they were in command. I felt like for the majority of this game, 6 guys scored in double figures. It was a really good collective performance. I was really interested to see how they would play against Golden State just because, as we know, the Warriors are one of the most unique teams from an offensive standpoint. But I was glad that they stayed composed and, like you said, stayed within their offense and did what they wanted to do rather than getting caught up in all of the hoopla. But I thought Beef Stew had a really good game. He did his thing. Jaden Ivey obviously also too did well. And Cade Cunningham led the charge. So it was another impressive performance for this team.
Definitely. And of course, they had the big win against the Brooklyn Nets. I know it's the Nets, but the Nets, they have had a couple of games here and there, a couple of flashes, but it was the most lopsided win in Pistons history in that one. They beat the Nets at home. It was a return back to Little Caesars Arena. The Pistons won 130-77, a 53-point victory. Again, the most lopsided win in Pistons history. I know we could spend quite a bit of time talking about just how crazy that part of the stat is, just how much they were winning by. But AJ, I want to go back again, and I think just how good they've been and how good they were last year, it mystifies me, really, that we are at this point right now with Detroit, again, top of the East. And just 2 years ago, we were talking about this being one of the worst teams of all time. I don't think it can go without saying just how crazy this turnaround has been. And again, kind of exemplified with that 53-point win.
Yeah,
there were 53-point losses probably a few years ago.
Yeah, man, it's been surreal. And for me, it's just another reminder of how quickly the tables can turn in professional sports, especially in the NBA. Even if you are a small market team, you don't have to necessarily bank on a superstar coming to your town anymore. If you're able to draft well and have a good coaching staff behind you and develop your young players well, you can win. And with the way things are working from a contractual standpoint now, the league is rewarding franchises for maintaining and retaining their top talent. So it's been a long time coming, but and I told you this a while ago, Phil, and it's easy for me to say this now in retrospect. I never felt like things were that bad when they were as bad as they were, and it led to just inevitable improvement. The Pistons were only a couple of pieces away even then. They had their superstar in place. Jalen Duren was here. Isaiah Stewart was here. Jaden Ivey was here. It was just a matter of putting all the pieces together and finding the right coach to sort of bolster that vision. So it's been really cool to see, and it's, like you said, Phil, it was kind of odd seeing such a beatdown considering this was a team that was taking some of those same beatings 2 years ago, 24 months ago. It was crazy. But yeah, that was almost an odd game with how lopsided it was. I mean, Brooklyn had, I think, 23 turnovers in that game.
You kind of start to feel bad for Brooklyn at some point.
Yeah. It was odd, but like you said, it's just another sign and another indicator of how far this team has truly come. Absolutely. And now they're at the top of the East, and the playoffs are creeping up, and they're getting closer and closer.
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, they hope to keep those winning ways ahead of them. They've got 4 games kind of leading into the All-Star break that we will, again, cover next week, but I want to go over them with you, AJ. Which of these games are you most excited to watch? Again, we teased it a little bit. The Denver Nuggets are headed over to Detroit to take them on later tonight on Tuesday. Then we've got another home game for Detroit. They're going to be hosting the Washington Wizards. Then another home game. They'll be hosting the New York Knicks. Again, kind of a revival of last year's playoff series. And then they travel to Charlotte to take on the Hornets. Of those 4 games, AJ, which one would you say, if you've got any time in the world, this is the game to check into?
Yeah, man. I think it would behoove me to say anything besides the Knicks game. Yeah, but there are still some really interesting games within this slate coming up. But obviously, I think the New York game will be a big one. I believe that's a nationally televised one. Just it'll be another chapter before the playoffs begin. Right. And I think these two teams could very well see each other. I think they could see each other in the conference finals, to be quite honest with you. So anytime those two match up against each other, it's always terrific. But I'm also interested to see how they play against Charlotte, Phil. The Hornets.
They are looking great.
The Hornets are like one of the league's hottest teams right now. I believe they've won 7 straight. LaMelo Ball's looking great. And this young core seems like it finally might be coming together. Right. So, yeah, I want to see how that game turns out. And also, too, I mean, the Nuggets just there was just a showdown between them and Detroit. So that'll be an interesting game. So this is a good slate.
This is one of the better slates, honestly. I think if you've got time any of these days, you got to check into some of these games. Yeah. But I was going to say, obviously the Knicks have been circled, I think, every time they play each other on everybody's calendars. But that Charlotte game is going to be so much fun to watch. I said it a couple of weeks ago that they don't play that great of defense, but if they are hitting their shots, they will score 150 on you before you even realize what's happening. So again, they are very fun to watch. That should be a really good game. Kind of, Detroit's defense, Charlotte's offense. We'll see which one kind of comes out on top in that one.
Yeah, every game is must-see TV.
Definitely.
Forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. Throw the question out the window. You got to tune in every week for the Pistons. All right, well, again, let's move on a little bit and talk about some of the league-wide news. Again, we've got the All-Star reserves to get to and, of course, the trade deadline. But really, a big headline that happened this week was the fact that Paul George, who, again, if you're familiar with the NBA, you've heard that name for years and years and years now as one of the top guys in the league. He has been suspended 25 games this season for violating the NBA's anti-drug policy. We don't know really any of the specifics around this, if it was a performance-enhancing drug or maybe something else. He did say in a statement, though, that he was seeking treatment for his mental health and that he took an improper medication. That was kind of the end of it. Again, a 25-game suspension for Paul George. Let's talk about just instant reactions to this and really how this impacts Philadelphia, who, they're in the midst of a 4-game winning streak right now. They've been playing a little bit better, and they're, 6th in the East right now, still trying to vie for a playoff spot and stay out of the play-in tournament, kind of leading into the playoffs as well. So I guess, just how big of a loss is this for Philly?
Yeah, I think it's a big one. I think from a financial and a logistical standpoint, it's maybe beneficial in some ways for the Sixers because they save $11 million and they were already, I believe, in the luxury tax, or I don't know if they were in the first apron. They might have been. But I know they were at the salary cap. They were past that. So I think from that standpoint it's beneficial, but overall, though, I mean, you want your guys on the floor, and missing 25 games, that's quite a bit, especially during this time. This is a really difficult time of the year. And Phil, like we've talked about so many times, this is an odd space because the playoffs are still somewhat distant, but the season is in full swing.
Right.
But this is also, too, where the standings really begin to fluctuate and where playoff standings really get solidified. So a bad stretch here could be the end of your season. And a good stretch could mean that you play into the spring. So Philly's going to have to find a way to hold up without him. Unfortunately, I think the Sixers, Tyrese Maxey, and the rest of this team have gotten used to having to sort of adapt without their main guys being there, just because health has seemed to be an ongoing issue in Philadelphia for quite some time now. But it's not a good thing, man. It's not good for this franchise. And if I'm Paul George, I just have to be worried about getting myself right and making sure I'm in tip-top shape and ready to go when my team needs me by the spring, because they are definitely going to need him.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if they're still in that playoff hunt. I mean, you got to think those 25 games going to kind of put you right up to, those last couple of weeks really before the playoffs started. So you got to figure out your standings there. Can Philadelphia kind of keep their head afloat for him to get back? I mean, they were just finally, it felt like starting to kind of get their feet up under them. They've another team that has kind of shown flashes and then kind of, fallen back down to earth a little bit throughout the season. They've still got a bunch of guys that I really like on that team. But again, I feel like Paul George was that veteran presence that you really do want to have and would love to have kind of as you are making that final push. Again, the East is still wide open. Detroit is maybe separating themselves a little bit, but I would still say there are chances for a lot of teams to still be competing in that. And again, this just shows that Philadelphia might have to make some trade deadline moves as well. We'll get to that in a little bit. But again, they might be having to look to pick up and fill that void over these next couple of games.
Yeah. This is a really dangerous Philadelphia team. And I don't think any Eastern Conference team would want to see a healthy Sixers team in any round of the playoffs. But Paul George is going to have to make sure he's ready to go when it's time, because they're going to need him. And like you said, he's not having the best year that he's had, but he is going to be an invaluable piece to this team when the playoffs start.
Definitely. All right. Well, again, Paul George is a multi-time All-Star, and now we've got a couple of first-time All-Stars for this upcoming All-Star game. Let's move into the reserves now. Of course, we brought you the starters a couple of weeks ago, just who will be leading or who was selected as starters for the East and West. Again, the teams are going to be different for this All-Star game. There's going to be two U.S. teams and then a world team competing against each other during All-Star weekend. But we have some reserves now to get to. Want to quickly go over just some of them. Let's start in the West. We have Denny Avdija of the Portland Trail Blazers. He's a first-time All-Star. Devin Booker, from right here in Michigan. He is going back to the All-Star game. He was named an All-Star for the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant of the Houston Rockets. Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Chet Holmgren of the Oklahoma City Thunder. LeBron James of the LA Lakers is back for another year. And another fresh face to the All-Star game is Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. And then over in the East, the big news, we were wondering if there would be another Detroit Piston. Well, there is. Jalen Duren is set to make his first All-Star game appearance. He's also going to be competing in the slam dunk contest. We'll get to that in just a little bit as well. Scotty Barnes of the Toronto Raptors joins him, along with Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks, who I love watching. Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers is back. Norm Powell of the Miami Heat. Pascal Siakam of the Indiana Pacers. And then Karl Anthony Towns of the New York Knicks rounds out the list of reserves. I don't want to give any, I don't want to say such and such, so-and-so didn't deserve to make the All-Star game, but I will say this is very different than what we've seen in regular years. I feel like there's always a couple of guys that you could say were snubbed of an All-Star selection, maybe should be taking the spot from some of these other guys. I like this list. I like all of these reserves. I don't think there was a bad pick in any of these. Nobody on that list I would say, shouldn't be an All-Star. There's nobody that didn't make it that I said should definitely be an All-Star. You can make cases for a couple of guys, but there was nobody that stood out to me as an obvious snub. I don't know about you, AJ.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say every year, oh, this guy should have made it, that guy should have made it.
Right.
But this year in particular, there's no one I think that you can really dispute. I'm not sure. I don't believe there is. I mean, you can look at, this guy's percentages are down, but that stuff doesn't matter. All of these guys are playing like all-stars, and they've all been terrific in their own right. I really am a fan of both lists. I really like all of them. I like that there is a mix of first-timers along with some perennial all-stars, and it seems like the league did a really good job of maintaining balance and making sure that, this guy got in who's having a really good year on maybe a team that's not performing that well. Or this guy, who maybe hasn't been in the game, like a Jamal Murray, for example.
Right.
Murray's always been terrific. He's had so many great seasons. This is his first year. I'm glad he finally got in.
Definitely.
So I'm a fan of it entirely. I think there are a couple of guys I would have liked to see. Like, I think Brandon Ingram definitely could have had a case for it. He's having a really fine year in Toronto. Alperen Sengun is having a really nice year in Houston. But having said that, there's nobody that I would bump off of either of those lists you named to bring those guys in. I just wouldn't do it because I think everyone that was named is deserving.
Right. No, I get one name that a lot of people have been mentioning is LeBron James, obviously. Whether you want to believe it or not, maybe the NBA had a role in kind of pushing him in there because he is sort of still the face of the league, going for his 22nd straight All-Star game appearance, by the way. I feel like you kind of have to include him, but he's also having a really good year. And like I said, for people that maybe don't follow the NBA that regularly, he's the one guy that everybody kind of knows who he is. If you walk up to a random person on the street and ask them to name an NBA player, LeBron James, more likely than not, is the choice that they're going with. So, again, kind of have to include him, but also I don't hate the pick. He's having a good year when he's been available for the Lakers.
It confuses me as to why people are even questioning this. He's the most recognizable figure in all of basketball. He's having an excellent year. His team is playing well. He's in the twilight years of his career. Why would he not be an all-star, Phil?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't get that disagreement at all. Let's talk about Jalen Duren, though, because you had mentioned that he was probably going to be the one guy from the Pistons that would find his spot there. You were right. I mean, how does it feel to, again, see another Detroit Piston part of the All-Star game?
It's really cool, man. It's awesome. Jalen Duren has had such a terrific year, and we've talked about it a lot, but I don't think enough has been said about all that he's added to his game. His arsenal has just really expanded, and he has really established himself, I think personally, as a really versatile low post scorer. Like, there are different ways to be able to get your points in the paint, and he does a phenomenal job every night of maneuvering and finding different ways. He's obviously a physical specimen. He rebounds the ball really well. He still relies on his strength and athleticism, but he's developed into a really good ball handler. I think he does a nice job of hanging out on the perimeter, making plays for guys, but also, too, his game is expanded to where he can shoot within 15 feet.
Right.
And his face-up game has also evolved. So he's been so terrific, man, on both ends of the floor. He really is, I think, the anchor to this Pistons team. Cade might be the engine that makes it go, but he's the one that kind of keeps everything together. And I think him and Isaiah Stewart have done a really phenomenal job of just manning the paint. But he is and was as deserving of being an all-star as anyone else. And JB Bickerstaff said this: when your team is at the top of your respective conference, multiple guys on that roster are all-stars.
Definitely.
Whether they're named or not, they deserve to be acknowledged as such. And I think the league did a great job of making sure that the Pistons got their credit, because it's a testament to everyone, testament to absolutely everyone, and assistant coaches and everyone who's played a role in helping all of these guys develop. JB Bickerstaff, as you know, will be in the All-Star game as well. So the Pistons will be well represented.
Definitely. Yeah, no, and it was, again, Jalen Duren's a walking double-double. I feel like, above all else, he definitely deserved a spot there. Like I said, he is going to be one of the participants in the slam dunk contest. Right now, the only other two contestants that have been named are Jackson Hayes of the LA Lakers and Carter Bryant of the San Antonio Spurs. You got to think Jalen Duren's probably the favorite in that one, just based off the names right now. Yeah.
I'm interested to see what he does. Big men in the slam dunk contest have always been, I feel like, pretty polarizing.
Right.
Like, it either goes really well or it can go really poorly. So, but Jalen Duren is super athletic. I know he's probably got some creativity up his sleeve. So I'm interested to see what he does.
Who do you think will have a better ending score, him or Andre Drummond? I don't know if you remember a few years ago when he was on the Pistons and made the slam dunk contest. That was kind of rough. I'm not gonna lie.
I think Duren will do better.
Yes, I think that's a safe bet there.
You know what would be cool? It would be awesome if he brings out Cade.
I think he has to, right? Cade will already be there for the All-Star game. He was named a starter. You got to include him in some way. Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire, they had that thing where Steve Nash kind of headbutted the ball to him. Maybe something. I don't know what Cade's soccer background is, but maybe they do something like that.
Oh, yeah. No, I think, like you said, you definitely got to bring him out.
Definitely. All right, well, let's talk about the trade deadline. We saved it to the very end because we wanted to spend as much time as possible talking about it, and that is because personally, I did not think too many things were going to happen as we kind of approached it. The trade deadline is on Thursday, so there's still time for new trades to happen, but nothing had really come about. So I didn't think we would be seeing a lot of crazy trades, but it really started on Sunday when the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and Chicago Bulls completed a 3-team trade. Want to go over just some of the details with that. Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder and Emmanuel Miller are going to Cleveland. Dario Saric and 2 second picks were then sent to Chicago. We'll mention Dario Saric again in just a bit. And then DeAndre Hunter, who was kind of one of the bigger trade deadline acquisitions last year when Cleveland picked him up from Atlanta. He's now going to Sacramento. It appears that maybe that just wasn't working out there in Cleveland. I really like DeAndre Hunter, though. And again, just kind of we know Dennis Schroeder. The Dennis Schroeder to Cleveland, I think, was kind of the big deal in that one, just because we as Pistons fans or Pistons supporters, we kind of see what he can do to a team that is competing, and especially in the playoffs. And again, that looked like it was going to be the end of it until, like I said earlier today, within the span of what seemed like 10 minutes, we had two major trades. Let's start with the first trade that happened today. It involved my Memphis Grizzlies. They sent Jaren Jackson Jr., the former Defensive Player of the Year, along with John Conchar, Jock Landale, and Vince Williams Jr. to Utah in exchange for 3 first-round picks: Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, a.k.a. Slow-Mo, Taylor Hendricks, and Georges Niang. Again, kind of crazy that all happened. I was in the middle of processing it, then out of nowhere, AJ sends me another message and says Ivy's gone. Yes, Jaden Ivey was then part of the next trade. It involved the Detroit Pistons, and they were part of yet another 3-team trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Chicago Bulls. Again, we said we mentioned Dario Saric again. Let's break this trade down. Again, 3 teams involved. The Pistons are sending Jaden Ivey to Chicago in exchange for Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric, who was just moved. So now he's headed to Detroit. So that's who's coming to Detroit. Jaden Ivey is leaving Detroit. Mike Conley is also moving from Minnesota to Chicago to join Jaden Ivey and those new look Bulls. And the Pistons and Timberwolves, the Pistons now have the option to also swap the first round picks with the Timberwolves in this upcoming draft. A lot of moving parts, a lot of changes. Let's go trade by trade. Let's start with that Dennis Schroeder to Cleveland one. Again, Cleveland, another team that Detroit could be seeing in the playoffs, another top team out east. This is a huge pickup for them. I, again, really like DeAndre Hunter as a player, but maybe that just wasn't fitting in. I know Dennis Schroeder is going to really get that team back into shape as a backup point guard for them.
Yeah, I think it benefits both teams in some ways. I think DeAndre Hunter might have just been in need of a new space, a fresh space, and I think Sacramento might be able to give him that. But like you said, Dennis Schroeder is a hooper, man. He's been able to thrive wherever he goes, and I think he'll thrive in a limited role in Cleveland. I think the Cavaliers, being a contending team, you always need guys who can create for themselves and others in limited time spans in the playoffs. That is so valuable. And Dennis Schroeder provides that. So I think the Cavaliers will greatly benefit from that. And they also, too, get Keon Ellis, who I think was one of the more coveted pieces in the trade deadline or during this time, just because of the fact that he's on a really team-friendly deal. And he's a guard filled with a lot of potential. So I think it was kind of a win-win. I think Cleveland did get the upper hand on this deal, especially considering all of their playoff aspirations of what they're trying to do. I think these guys will benefit them more immediately. But still, I think it's a solid trade on both ends.
Yeah. Well, AJ, you're not going to believe this. We have another trade to talk about just as we are talking. This is the latest, again, from Shams Charania. That is where we are grabbing this from. Real quick, just want to make sure I've got this available to everybody. So the Chicago Bulls, this is the 3rd trade that the Bulls have been involved so far this trade season. They are trading Nikola Vucevic and a 2nd-round pick to the Boston Celtics for Anthony Simons and a 2nd-round pick. So the Celtics get Nikola Vucevic, and the Bulls will now have Anthony Simons. Again, Anthony Simons was kind of a big deal going to Boston in the offseason when Jason Tatum went down. They made that trade with the Portland Trailblazers. Wow, instant reaction. We are legitimately doing instant reactions to this trade. Again, surprised the Bulls have been so active, I guess. I feel like they're trying to get rid of they're doing a fire sale right now, maybe.
For sure.
This trade is interesting for the Boston aspect, though, because Boston has surprised a lot of teams, a lot of people this year, I think, with how they've been able to kind of stay in the playoff race right now. This is, again, Nikola Vucevic is a great addition, I think, to a team that could really use a big man right now.
Yeah, I think so, man. I mean, Nikola Vucevic has always been an interesting player, in my opinion, because as talented as he's always been, it's always felt like he's been on the wrong end of a timeline. When he was in Orlando, they were terrific, but Orlando really wasn't going anywhere at the time. Then when he got to Chicago, things quickly went awry. Now he's in a really competitive environment where winning is the expectation every year. So I think this is really solid. I'm interested to see how they utilize him. I know Boston likes to shoot a lot of threes, and low post threats in Boston have a really unique role within their offense and their defense because of how they play, and also too how wing oriented they are. So I'm interested to see immediately how it fits with him in this roster and him in this lineup with Jaylen Brown and Peyton Pritchard and the rest of these guys. But I'm even more intrigued at how the fit works long term when Jason Tatum gets back. But I think this is a solid deal for them. If they like it, I love it.
Yeah, no, I think Boston definitely benefits the most from this. I really like Anthony Simons as well, but I don't know what Chicago's deciding to do now. I feel like, they just brought in Jaden Ivey as well. So, two guard situation, what's going to happen there? You got rid of Kevin Huerter. You still got Josh Giddey and Kobe White. I mean, they've got some pieces still. So I don't know what in particular.
You have to think that one of these guys is being rerouted somewhere else.
Another trade for Chicago,
I think so, man. Chicago, because right now this seems like this doesn't feel complete.
No.
Like, I don't think that this is the roster that they plan on sitting on and going through the rest of the year with. So, I don't know. Maybe next week I'll be wrong. Maybe this is the roster they're going with, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. But
yeah.
I kind of believe that at least one of these guys is being rerouted somewhere else as we speak.
Yeah, no, again, I think that it was just shocking, I guess, that the Bulls have just been doing so much. I mean, we talked about it last week, though. I mean, there were teams out there that maybe aren't competitive and looking for that top guy, but maybe they're looking to offload some guys, get ready. Again, this is a really good upcoming draft class, but I think one thing in particular I am surprised by is the Bulls don't seem to be getting any draft picks back for a lot of these guys that they're sending out. Again, maybe it's part of a bigger scheme for them. Maybe they really are just clearing house. Who knows? But yeah, that's instant reaction. That's the beauty of recording these when the trade deadline is looming like this. So again, that's just instant reactions to that one. Let's go back to some of the other trades now, AJ. Let's talk about this Grizzlies and Utah one. Again, Jaren Jackson Jr., former Defensive Player of the Year, multiple-time All-Star. He's headed out to go join Keontae George and Ace Bailey, Lauri Markkanen over there. And then the Grizzlies, I feel like this trade for them in particular was more so about those 3 draft picks. I think, you look at some of the guys that they did get in this trade. Obviously, Kyle Anderson returns to Memphis. He was a fan favorite. Walter Clayton Jr. is a rookie, but, an older rookie, lots of experience in college. Taylor Hendricks and Georges Niang, I mean, they're, middling guys that can help out on a given night, but, nothing too substantially. I think those 3 draft picks are the key for that trade for the Grizzlies. And again, just goes to show that this is really a rebuild. From a Grizzlies standpoint, as a Grizzlies fan, I feel like this just kind of goes to show that they are fully blowing up the Jaren Jackson Jr., John Morant, Desmond Bane led Grizzlies. They traded Desmond Bane in the offseason. Now Jaren Jackson Jr. is gone. I feel like John Morant's up next now.
Yeah, you have to think that. This is pretty surreal, especially considering the fact that it doesn't feel like it was that long ago when the Grizzlies were pegged to be the team out of the Western Conference. They were expected to be the team that was going to be competing and that was going to have the West on lock by the time years like these arrived. And now they're in the process of getting ready to undergo another rebuild. Right. So, no, I agree with you, Phil. I definitely think Ja is the last piece to probably get things going before the rebuild officially begins. But this was an interesting trade. It's a blockbuster deal. I think Utah getting Jaren Jackson Jr. back in return and sending out those 3 first-round picks, to me, it signals that the Jazz believe they're not that far from contending. Because I don't think a team that is in the process of going through their own rebuild would make a move of this caliber.
No.
And Jaren Jackson Jr. has 3 years and more than $200 million left on his deal. That's not cheap. That's a lot of money on your books for the next few seasons. And I really like this young core that they're building. I'm a really big fan of Lauri Markkanen. He's having a phenomenal year. Ace Bailey Jr. super talented. Jaren Jackson Jr. is obviously ridiculous. And Keontae George is talented in his own right as well. So I like what they're doing. And individually, I think they have some really good pieces in place. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see, I guess, how the Jazz kind of move going forward and really what that inevitable roster is going to be when, the big loss for them right now is their big man, Walter Kessler, who, blocks almost every single shot. He is another really good defensive big. You pair him up with Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know how you score in the paint with them, but the question then becomes, you've got all these sort of bigger guys. How do you kind of finagle the offense around, these different positions and kind of move move forward with that. It'll be interesting to see. Again, maybe the Jazz are another team that isn't fully done with some of their trades. Again, they still probably have quite a few picks left over from that Rudy Gobert trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves still. So, again, it'll be interesting to see there. But let's talk about the Pistons trade now. Again, for big news, we touched on it. Jaden Ivey probably would be the one guy maybe on the chopping block. He ends up going to Chicago. Before we talk about Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric coming to Detroit, let's talk about Jaden Ivey's fit with the Chicago Bulls. Again, just mentioned it. What is Chicago's inevitable plans going to be? But I think he could really flourish on a team that just gives him the space and sort of the time out on the floor. This is nothing against Jaden Ivey seeing him go or thinking that he would go, but I think he would probably prefer to be on a team that isn't as stacked right now, especially at the guard position, and kind of allowing him to have a little bit more time out there playing.
Yeah, I think he's going to need a team and a coaching staff that is patient with him and that's going to give him the space he needs to make mistakes and to thrive and just to get back into a groove.
Right.
He really didn't have the luxury of that in Detroit because the Pistons were trying to compete from the get-go, and minutes were hard to come by. And I think, like I told you, Phil, beforehand, I think there were so many nights where I could see exactly what he was trying to do, but his body just wasn't there yet. And I know it was incredibly frustrating for him. I don't know if you saw this, Phil. I heard reports and I saw people talking about how he seemed visibly frustrated with his teammates and people around him. I never really got that indication from watching Pistons games. I could tell at times he was frustrated, but I didn't feel like he was frustrated with any of the guys around him. But I think he was just in desperate need of a fresh start. And I think for the Pistons, this is a really solid deal. I really wasn't a fan of them making too many moves at the deadline just because this is a really talented young team. And to be completely honest with you, if you would have asked me a week or two ago, hey, is Ivy the guy to deal? I would have said no, just given the fact that I think he's still super young, and I think he's still obviously trying to come back from this knee injury. And I think there's a really good basketball player still there. I think it's just a matter of him getting fully healthy and him being in a position where he can make mistakes and learn and eventually grow and thrive. But I looking back on it in retrospect, as in an hour, I don't know if Detroit would have given him that space, just given the fact that, like I said, things have gotten so competitive. And like we talked about, Phil, you don't have time to really develop or do any of those things anymore. Time is no longer on your side because you're trying to win night in and night out. And I still think Jaden Ivey many nights contributed to winning basketball, but I think he's going to need to be in a space, like I said, where he maybe just has a bit of a longer leash.
Yeah. No, I think this is a very mutually beneficial trade. You don't really see that in today's NBA, but I think the Pistons definitely improved in ways that they needed to, and that is three-point shooting with Kevin Huerter, and then you're giving Jaden Ivey, again, some second life. Not so sure how I feel about them being in the same division, though. You usually don't see teams trading within the same division, but it will be interesting that first game back for Jaden Ivey over at Little Caesars. But let's talk about Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric. Again, Dario Saric, he's been kind of in and out of lineups due to injuries over the past couple of seasons, but he has shown flashes in the past, both with Denver and with Phoenix, that he can be sort of a good backup big for you. But the real key here has got to be Kevin Huerter, who, again, is a great three-point shooter, fully stretches out the floor. It'll be time will tell if he fully fixes the Pistons' shooting woes, but you got to think that this is a guy who was available, they took the swing, and it should benefit them and kind of pay off.
Yeah, definitely. I think it should pay immediate dividends. I've always been a fan of Herter's game. It's simple. He brings shooting, like you said, and this team is in desperate need of that. They're going to need more of that, especially when the playoffs start. I think it gets underestimated sometimes at how valuable it is to have guys that you can run off screens that can knock down jumpers.
Right.
You need that sometimes. It is a primary source of so many successful offenses. When things begin to go awry, if you can get a guy in a double screen, if you can get him off of a down screen and on one of the wings or off of a flare screen, whatever it is you want to do, if you can get a guy open on the three-point line that you trust to make shots, it is incredibly beneficial, and the Pistons simply need more of that right now. I think Duncan Robinson is that main guy, and I think he'll continue to carry that responsibility. But getting Huerter creates a whole different ball game, and it really will make teams adjust on the scouting report when the postseason arrives. And I really am a fan of Saric, too. He hasn't been healthy for most of this year, but he was one of those draft and stash guys. I don't know if you remember, Phil, and I believe 2014 he was drafted 12th overall by the Sixers, came over here, and his game is I think it directly correlates with the European style of basketball that he came up in, which is he's really big, he's versatile, but at the same time, he can shoot from the outside and he's got plenty of skill and he has a really good feel for the game. And I think that's why he's been able to thrive in limited capacities wherever he's gone. He's always been a solid player, which is why I think he's remained in the league for as long as he has. So whenever he does get healthy, if he's somebody that the Pistons hope to keep around, I'd like to see him in a Pistons uniform because I think he could provide some dividends as well. You can never have enough shooting. You can never not have it.
No, right. And he's a big fan favorite. I know he gets talked about as much as a lot of other guys who are, kind of journeymen in the league, have been on a bunch of different teams. He just seems to really bring a lot of happiness wherever he goes. And you could always use that. You never use too much happiness or too many guys that kind of keep the peace in the locker room a little bit. So glad to see that. But let's talk about the Pistons' kind of future now with this trade deadline. Again, still a little over a day and a half left before the trade deadline officially closes. You said you weren't really sure you wanted them to make any trades at all, but now that they've made one, I mean, do you see them possibly doing anything else before the trade deadline, or do you think this maybe was the one thing that they wanted to kind of check out on?
I think I'm sure they're probably being aggressive. I'm sure they may be looking to see, hey, is there another shooter on the market that we can get without having to give up too much? But I think the Pistons are well aware of how good their young core is, and I think they want to keep this group together. And so I don't think you risk bringing in a little more shooting at the expense of that. I don't think it would be smart, and I don't think it would be conducive to success in the long term. So I don't foresee them doing anything right now. I think this was as solid of a move as I could have asked for from the Pistons. They're in a really good spot. They're in a really good spot. You have all the cap space in the world. You have your superstars in place. You got, your big man who was just named to the All-Star game. You're at the top of your conference. And you have your whole future ahead of you. Right. You're just in the process of figuring out how good you can be. You haven't been to the mountaintop yet. So you want to be very careful and you want to be very cautious about who you choose to add to the mix in the midst of all this. So I really like Huerter. I think it's beneficial, like you said, to both sides. Ivy gets a fresh start. Huerter gets to play competitive basketball right away, and he gets to be plugged into a roster that will automatically need his services. I don't think you can ask for more, Phil.
Right. Well, is there any other teams, kind of outside of the Pistons, any other teams, though, that you think could be making a pretty big splash? There's talk still about Giannis. What's going to happen with the Bucks there? Right now, the Miami Heat are kind of a favorite to do that, but so are the Minnesota Timberwolves. We were talking a little bit beforehand, before we started recording today, that they could potentially make a big swing for him. Don't know what that would look like, but do you foresee any team, maybe a competing team, especially maybe even in the East, that we should be kind of maybe on the lookout for, maybe ready to make a big swing, like a Giannis or like a random player here just to make a big move?
Yeah, I mean, I am personally wouldn't be the biggest fan of it, I guess, but I think the Knicks might make some calls about Giannis. I think they might at least try to. I don't think Giannis will be dealt during this trade deadline. I think they'll probably wait until the summer when they can maybe get more and maybe even entice a team at the top of the lottery to give up one of their picks. But having said that, I'm not too sure, but I think there are a handful of contending teams that are probably looking to move a few guys around, looking to make a couple of moves like the Pistons are. I think the Sixers could probably look to add some more depth to their roster because depth at the end of the day is what you need to make a long postseason run. So I think they could be looking to get someone really talented. But yeah, I'm not too sure, Phil. I know we talked about it a little bit. James Harden is linked to the Cavaliers. I know that's a possibility. I don't entirely understand, given the fact that Harden is on an expiring deal and Darius Garland is under team control, I believe, until 2028. But Darius Garland has had his fair share of health issues. I know he's had issues with both of his toes, and he's been out for a good portion of this season. And at the end of the day, Harden is as dynamic of a guard as you can ask for. So I guess I could understand Cleveland making that move. I'm not sure if they will, but yeah, I think there are a few contending teams working the phones right now, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But so far, this has been a pretty entertaining trade deadline, Phil.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, even just today, I've loved it. And it's always crazier as we get closer and closer. So we know Thursday, Wednesday night even, is going to be very hectic. We actually do have a big breaking one. This one's crazy, AJ. Oh my gosh.
Oh, man.
Giannis.
Are you serious?
Is going to the Lakers. I'm totally kidding. That is not true.
I literally was saying, you're joking. You're joking.
You didn't buy it for half a second, did you?
Man.
Yeah, that would have been crazy. I don't think that would, we would have to stop the show and re-record everything if that happened, probably.
Throw out the rundown.
Exactly. All right, awesome. Well, again, those are all the trades right now. Everything we said, the honest one is not real, just so everybody knows. But again, we are going to be keeping close eye on everything. We'll be bringing you all the latest news from the NBA, especially that trade deadline coming up on next week's episode. I want to thank AJ for stopping by, and I want to thank everybody so much for tuning into this latest episode of NB8.